Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
And that's what's so critical. What you're thinking is still going inside of your body. Just because you don't say the words doesn't mean that it's not so, because you still think, right? And so we've gotten to the point where, well, as long as I keep my mouth shut, I'm okay. No, you're not. You're still storing up your body. You are still putting emotions in your body because of your need to be right. And if we have no right or wrong, then what is? And that's all there is, right? It's either energy or it's not. Whether you're speaking the words, whether you're thinking the words, whether you're thinking it, still matters. We've done so many more cellulars because people have stored so much more in the last 8 years than I've seen in my 28 years of doing this work. Because we think it, even if we don't speak it. And we're still filling our bodies with things that are conditional.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.
Hi, everyone. It's Patti Conklin giving you another episode of Healing Within and Adventure Inside. I have an awesome guest today. I know you're going to look forward to hearing about him as I hear about him and learning his story. His name is Ray Martin, and I know he's written a book, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But Ray, welcome on board. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you. But it's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
So talk to us about you. Who are you?
Yeah, well, I'm an Englishman, 62 years old. And when I was growing up in a small town outside London, thinking about who I wanted to be, I guess you could sum it up by saying, I really wanted to be a sort of successful, respected and admired businessman. That was, that was what I saw as being the sort of the pinnacle of success when I was a child growing up in the 60s. And I had a lot of encouragement to do that from my family and friends because they all thought this was a great idea. You get the good job, the wife, the house, the kids, the whole package. And so I followed what I described that as what I call the mainstream way of living. I never questioned it. I just committed to following that plan and doing the best I could to kind of climb my way up the ladder.
Yeah.
And I eventually got to a point where I started my own company, and I started it with a woman who's my business partner, who became my fiance, and we eventually got married.
Yay!
And so in the 90s, in the 97, we launched our own business, and I was 34 then, and I became the CEO of the company, and we eventually had about 20 people working in the company, and it was super, super successful. I mean, we have a newspaper in England called the Daily Telegraph, and every year they pick people to receive their prestigious Business Leader of the Year award. And I was one of the recipients in 2002, age 42. I sort of thought, I'd made it.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah. I was sort of at the pinnacle of success in the eyes of everyone else, of course. And I had a great house in London, a lovely wife. Everything on the paper looked brilliant. But the truth is, on the inside, it didn't feel very great for me. I sort of felt like I was almost living someone else's life. It wasn't feeling great. I had a huge amount of discontent and I couldn't explain it. I was restless. None of it made any sense. But I knew I was sort of somehow, I kind of was on the wrong path. That's all I could describe it as.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do about it. I was, everything I'm saying to you, by the way, I've described in the early chapters of the book. And then one day, once I got to a sort of fever pitch of torment around this, one day my wife came back from a business meeting and said, very suddenly, I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company.
Oh my goodness.
It was a huge shock. This was in the end of 2003.
Wow.
We'd been married for about 7 years and we built this really beautiful business and everyone who worked in it loved it. But she said, I'm done. I've met someone. I'm leaving. And it was such a shock. And at the same time, as if that wasn't bad enough, my father got very ill and he died shortly afterwards.
Oh no. Wow.
And so within about 2 or 3 months, Patti, I was literally standing in a bomb crater looking at what was my life. I was out of my company, I was out of my home, out of my marriage, and my father had passed away. And I was just so desperately broken and unhappy.
Yes, I can imagine. That's horrific.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to do. And for about a year, I was in that kind of really low, broken and depressed place without really understanding how to get myself out of it. And then I thought somebody suggested I should take a 6-month sabbatical and, go maybe do a bit of traveling, take myself out of the typical environment I spent most of my time in, which was in the business world.
Yeah.
Put it to one side and just take 6 months off and go traveling, etc. And I thought there was some wisdom in that. So I decided to minimalize my life. So I sold my house in London and got rid of a lot of things that I owned to get my stuff down to a sort of bag of clothes and a laptop, basically. I had a couple of other bits, but I stored those. And I decided to go for 6 months to Asia. I'd never been to Asia. I'd never had what they call a gap year, when you go to university and you take a year out. I went straight into the workplace when I left school, so I never had a gap year.
Right.
I was so intent on becoming a successful businessman. I just wanted to get started. I didn't want to spend any time further study.
Right.
So for me, it was like going back 20 years and having a gap year, or a gap 6 months, let's say. And I was on that journey backpacking around Asia, and I was realizing that there was much I wanted to learn and do and discover on the inner journey of life, not on the outside. But for example, after 6 months, someone said to me, why don't you go and do a Vipassana retreat? And I said, what's a Vipassana retreat? I had no idea what that was. They said, you go into a Buddhist monastery for 10 days and you sit silently with the monks and you meditate. I thought, gosh, I've never been silent for 10 minutes, let alone 10 days. But they could see I was feeling agitated and anxious and nervous and scared about the life in front of me, based on what was happening. And I thought that would really calm me down most likely. So I did that, and it just completely and utterly changed how I felt. My mindset was grounded, calm. And I knew I wanted to continue doing more things like that and carry on the journey of discovery I was on. So I didn't return to England after 6 months. I kept on going. I didn't return even after a year. In fact, I returned 14 years later that I lived out of my backpack.
Oh my goodness.
And that's why life without a tie has come into existence, because for 14 years, I lived having cut the 4 major ties that hold our lives in place, which are your partner or spouse, your career, your community of friends, and your home, your house.
Right.
Most people, I was one of them. Most people define it's like the 4 corners of a tent holding the tent down.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you cut one of those ties, if you're putting to put a tent up and one of the tent pegs comes loose, it wobbles a little. If 2 of the pegs come loose, it's a bit unstable. If 3 come loose, the whole thing's really shaky.
Yeah.
If all 4 of them come loose, there's no tent. It's just gone.
It's gone.
And so I actually experienced having all 4 of those ties cut at the same time. And so I really didn't know who I was at that moment, had to reinvent myself. And so I went on this incredibly, I mean, I could talk forever about it, so I won't, but 14 years in 28 different countries. I started a fundraising foundation. I acted in a play. I started coaching people in organizations throughout Asia. It just, so many things happened that I would never have dreamed of.
Right.
And people kept asking me as I was doing it, what my story was, or why I was doing it. And every time I spoke to someone, they said, "Are you ever going to write a book about this? Because if you do, I'd really like to read it." I said, "Oh," I laughed my head off. I said, "You're kidding. I'm not a writer." I said, "No, I'm just doing this for me. I've got no intention I didn't do this to write a book."
Right.
But then after about 100 people asked me that question over 4 or 5 years, I thought, oh God, the universe wants me to write a book. I mean,
Yes.
I kept getting this message over and over and over again. And so I committed to write a book, and I didn't know how to write. So in 2011, I started the journey in 2005. In 2011, 6 years in, I put myself on a 5-day writer's course with this amazing big shot writer teacher from New York City, who came to Thailand, where I was living, and run this retreat. And I learned the basics of how I was going to need to think to write a book.
Yes.
And that was the start. And then I finally got the book published last year in 2022. So it took me 10 years to get the book written, but I was still in the journey until 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge letting go. I mean, right?
Massive
People
letting
like
go.
Their stability. They like to know their homes, and my children have always called me the wanderer, because I can't stay home very often. I need to get up there and see what's going on. But you truly lived it for 14 years of just moving from place to place. I'm assuming you didn't just get to one country and set up a house and do that. You continued to live out of your backpack.
I did.
And do that. And the faith and the depth of commitment, most people can't grasp. Especially as you're traveling through Asia and so forth, been there a lot. And, it can get topsy-turvy at times as you're traveling. So what kept you on course? What kept you there doing the things that you were doing for 14 years?
Yeah, well, initially, that's a great question. Initially, I was just happy to be a tourist, because I was trying to just give myself time to uncouple from some of the programmed thinking I'd had as a businessman.
Yeah.
So for the first couple of years, just not doing nothing, but having no obligations or targets or financial goals and commitments that I was used to was a real relief, and I had to really adjust my mind around that stuff.
I was going to say, I mean, the first couple of months, I mean, I know that when I stopped traveling so much, it's like Saturday morning would come and I'm like, I'm home on Saturday. What am I going to do? I'm going to stay in bed because I'm actually home on a Saturday.
Yeah.
How we retrain our brain from one experience for a long period of time to another. I mean, it's nice not having the obligation, but psychologically,
it's challenging. It's a massive transition. And there's a guy called William Bridges, who's one of the world's experts on transitions. And I referenced his book when I was writing my own, so I could make sense of what I'd experienced. Yeah. And he talks about the fact that most of us, we go from an ending straight into a beginning with nothing in between, and we don't make the psychological adjustments, and it's extremely uncomfortable.
Yes.
He said, what actually is true about a transition is that there's an ending. Something in your life comes to an end. In my case, it was letting go of being a CEO of a business and being married and living in a home. That came to an end. And then eventually, some way down the road, there's a new beginning emerging. But this period between the ending and the new beginning can be weeks, months, sometimes even years.
Yes.
And he said that period has got its own identity. He calls it the neutral zone. And he says you go into the neutral zone and none of the rules of normal life apply in the neutral zone.
Yes.
There are things like, don't take action for action's sake, make temporary structures, don't commit to anything, just be living in a very in the moment way.
Yes.
In that period. And so aware of that, and because I had that understanding and knowing I was frightened and scared and wasn't feeling uncertain, I created 10 guiding principles for myself, which I wrote down and instructed Ray, on this journey, you're going to follow and live these 10 guiding principles. And I literally made them up to work for me.
Yeah.
And I wrote them down. They're all in the book, but there were things like, I decided to have a guiding principle around presence, being present and living in the moment now. And every time I caught myself thinking about the past or thinking about the future, which was most of the time, I brought myself back to go, no, I'm here now. What am I doing right now? How can I be giving this moment now my undivided attention and be here fully present? So that's an example. Another example was I decided to live by the principle of self-acceptance, because I was beating myself up and criticizing myself daily for being a crappy husband, for being a failure at that level, for all the things that I'd done that I didn't work.
Yeah.
All the shame and the guilt I was carrying because of it. I thought, this isn't going to work for me. I'm just going to drive myself into the ground. I need to find a way to say, you did your best and you're going to do your best and you're going to keep improving.
Yes.
And so self-acceptance became a guiding principle that I followed in my mind. And there are 7 or 8 others that I could go through, but these 10 guiding principles are still serving me today, and they're in the book so people can see them.
Yeah. So as you went from neutral, being in the present, and moving into, helping set up a foundation or the different various tasks you did in Asia, was it hard not to jump back into business mode? And B, what did you discover about yourself when you were helping the various things that you were doing through those years of 14 years?
Yeah, I mean, what I discovered about myself really was that if I listened to my inner voice rather than my rational mind, and not follow the logic, but follow the heart dialogue, I realized that my heart really knew the things that I wanted to do and loved to want to do, so I discovered that if I follow that inner voice, that inner wisdom, that inner guidance, I call it, I'm always going to be making the right choices, whether they work or not. It doesn't matter, because there's a kind of joy and bliss that comes from following that path rather than the one you ought to or should, or you think others would approve of you doing, which is how I'd spent all of my life up to that point. Now, I'm not knocking that, because I had lived according to that previous system and I'd become quite prosperous and done wealthy and stuff. So I'm not saying it's terrible.
Right.
But I really wanted to try a different compass. I really wanted to find out the truth. How is it when you follow your heart, you follow your guidance, and you're not fixed on a certain outcome. You're just following that path to see where it leads you. And I discovered that I really loved that way of living much, much more in my way of showing up. Yeah. And now my finances are different in my life today than they were before. I'm more modest way of life financially, but I don't care, because I'm actually way happier living this way. And I've sort of discovered my values. I rediscovered and redefined my values. I would say just to be personal, make it clear, my 4 core values are freedom, love, integrity, and exploration. I didn't know this really about myself before. But when I'm doing things in my life that honor the value of my freedom, that honor the fact that I absolutely love showing up with love, compassion, and kindness, whatever I do. And that has to be honored by the people around me. When I'm acting with integrity, doing the right thing, keeping my agreements, doing what I say, and just doing the right thing.
Right.
You know what that means. And when I'm exploring new things, because one of the things that brings me a lot of joy is being an explorer, is never settling for exactly how things are, but always finding something new, a new frontier to be on the edge of. So I'm always constantly growing and learning. These are 4 values that for me are really critical.
I mean, that's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Is like I remember calling my boys on August 1st one year.
Yeah.
And I said, so, I just need to get out and stop working for a little bit. And they're like, what are you doing? And I said, I've been sitting here at the airport with my suitcase, and I've just been looking at where I can go without a visa. So I'm going to go to Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and then I'm going to go hike in the Amazon for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And my son's response was, are you ever going to grow up? But I'm like, no, because there's such an incredible world out there. Why would I not want to explore and expand and journey? And so I really hear you when you're doing that, because, we get out of high school or we get out of college, and it's like, gotta be a success. And, I was fortunate in that I was overseeing women's literacy programs in 30 countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So I kind of got to start that exploring bug. But 42 seems to be a pinnacle year for people that make that transition from that structured work.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. It can be, I guess. Yeah,
it is. I hear so many people, and I was 42 as well. When I left structure of corporate, nonprofit and moved into this.
Yeah.
So I think that you being able to take that time, I know you've got dozens and dozens of favorite experiences, but what's one? What's one that really stood out and helped you go through a major growth time? Is there one?
Yeah, there's lots, but the first one that comes to mind is, and it was one of the marathons that I ran, because you asked me earlier, what kept me going. And for the first few years, it was okay to be a tourist. But after 3 or 4 years, I really felt I had this real yearning. It wasn't like an ought to or should. It was a genuine, real desire. I had a real desire to contribute to the communities I was passing through and being part of. And I'd been to this wonderful elephant sanctuary in the north of Thailand, where they were rescuing elephants and taking care of them and giving them a proper habitat in the wild. And I trekked a couple of times in the Himalayas. In fact, the cover of the book is me on the way to
Everest. Oh my goodness!
That's me on the way to Everest Base Camp.
Wow.
And because I'd been in Nepal a few times and I trekked in the Himalayas, I organized at an orphanage in Pokhara in Nepal. I organized a picnic for about 65 kids in this orphanage because a friend of mine had volunteered there a year before and told me about it. And I saw the joy and happiness that came to these children just having a simple picnic. It cost me $20 to do this picnic. And I thought, what else could I do for those kids? Look at all the privilege I have and the skills I have and the knowledge and the business contacts I have.
Sure.
And I thought, I want to do something. And I didn't know what to do, but I thought I want to do something with my time. I want a bit more purposeful use of my time. And as I was pondering it, I always think when you've got these questions you're sitting with, the universe kind of somehow tunes in and sends you the right people, when you need them. And so then I just bumped into a guy on my travels whose name is Matt Campbell. I've written about him in the book. He's a lovely chap. And I asked him about his life, and he told me he had run 6 marathons. He was about 10 years younger than me, but and very fit. And he said, yeah, I run 6 marathons. I said, what's it like running a marathon? And he told me all about it. And I could feel the excitement as I was listening. I thought, oh my God. And then I suddenly thought, maybe that's it. Maybe I could run a marathon and raise money for these things. And so I said to Matt, do you think I could run a marathon? I was 48 years old. And he said, have you ever run before? I said, no, I've never run even 100 meters. I've never run in my life. He said, well, he looked at me and he said, well, you look quite fit. He said, I'll tell you what I'm prepared to do. He said, you come and stay where I'm living in a place called Chiang Mai in Thailand. If you come there for 6 months, I'll train you to run a marathon. I said, okay, it's a deal. So that's what I did. I went and lived there for 6 months.
Wow.
And guess what? He said, we started training together, and I started training, but also my fundraising, because I started building a fundraising campaign called Calling All Angels, which is in the book. And I was ringing people in America and England and all these people I knew. I mean, eventually raised $15,000 for this first marathon.
Beautiful.
And Matt said to me, what marathon do you want to run? You got for your first one. And I said, well, to be honest, I was in New York 2 or 3 years ago, and I watched the end of the New York marathon. I thought, I'd love to run in this one. He said, well, there's a ballot to get in that one. It's very popular. He said, why don't you put yourself in it? So I entered the ballot and I got a place first time. I was just really amazed that I got a place first time. Clearly, I think God wanted me to be in that race or something.
Absolutely.
And so on the 1st of November 2009, I flew to New York and I ran the New York Marathon, and it raised $15,000 for those orphans and for the Elephant Age Park.
26.5 miles, isn't it?
26.5 miles. And I set my dream goal target was to run the marathon in less than 4 hours. I didn't. I ran it in 4 hours and 16 minutes, but it wasn't bad for a first time.
No.
And I was nearly 50, you know, and it was the first time I'd ever run a marathon in my life. So,
oh my gosh.
And I can't tell you, I mean, the joyful tears of joy for me to be doing all of that, because the marathon itself was a big achievement, but the greater achievement was it had raised all this money, and after a year of campaigning and fundraising and all that effort had come to be, I was able to go back to those places with the money, right, and say, right, now you're going to get some serious help. Now here's some money, you can really do something here. Right. And I went back to Nepal and we built a school building, and we got them motorbikes and software and computers, and the elephants got a brand new concrete shelter, proper shelter, and it was just amazing.
Gosh, it's amazing. And it's amazing how little money, you know, that we consider in the US or Europe, whatever, can do so much. Yeah,
it really was. It really was. And so this gave me, it was like a project that took about 2 years of my journey. And again, I've written about all of this in the book. And I still was dissatisfied that I didn't run the marathon in under 4 hours. And about 6 years later, when I was on my 4th marathon, because I kept on running marathons, right, on my 4th one, I did actually run under 4 hours, 3 hours, 56 minutes.
Wow.
So I eventually did improve and get past the.
Well, I mean, not only did you improve, you also were getting older.
I was 54 when I broke that record. Yeah.
And most people would say, well, I'm getting older, so I can't do it as fast. Yeah. And you just had the attitude of, let's just get this done. You know, this is a personal goal, and let's keep it going.
You know, the universe intervened even in that. You know, I've had such amazing guidance and powerful, like when I was training for the London Marathon, which was marathon number 3. I was in Thailand while I was doing my training, and I tore a calf muscle in my leg, and that's a serious injury, and you can't train when you've got that because you have to stop and rest. Right. I had a really good friend in Chiang Mai who was a doctor from Boulder, Colorado, and he knew how to do acupuncture, and he said, I'm going to come and do acupuncture treatments on your muscle, and it will help it heal faster so that you can get back to training sooner. And then you can maybe still do your 4 hour in London, but let's see. Anyway, it didn't work out so well with the treatments, and my injury did take a while. And he said, I know a woman in Colorado. I think she's a good runner or something like that, and she trains runners. He said, would you like me to connect with her and see if she could help you maybe revise your training plan, and maybe you could do a good time in London if she was to help you? Right. I said, okay. Put me in touch with her, but I was very skeptical that she would make any difference. I didn't believe it would make any difference, honestly. I thought, this is a waste of time, but I'll honor my friend's good intention. Sure. So she put me in touch with her, and she said, she asked me a lot of questions about how I was training and how old I was and everything. She said, let me put together a plan for you, which I think would work. And she sent it to me a couple of days later, and I looked at it and I said, are you sure about this? It doesn't look like it would work to me. She said, no, trust me. I know what I'm doing. Anyway, I didn't know who she was at the time. I literally had no idea, and I feel embarrassed admitting this, but it turned out that she was one of the women's best ever marathon runners. She'd got a medal at the Olympics. She was very famous marathon runner in the women's season. And she'd retired, but she really knew about running. I didn't know this. And so once I'd established that, and I ate humble pie, and I really backtracked, I agreed to follow her method. And by doing that, I got under 4 hours, and she was the person that showed me how to do it.
On how to do it.
And so the serendipity was that if I hadn't been injured and I hadn't gone through those steps, I would never have met her. Absolutely. And so I sort of saw my injury as a gift in that sense.
Yes. I mean, that's what's so wonderful. That's
Yeah.
what's so wonderful is, you know, people look at an injury or an illness as something to be negative. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, this is your growth time. Take it as a gift, because something
Correct.
is going to happen that will help you grow and achieve your desires. So,
Yeah.
so where does life lead you now?
Well, so I was still in this journey up until March, April of 2019.
Uh-huh.
And in the last 2 or 3 years, I'd left the Asian orbit because I met a woman from Poland who I fell in love with. And eventually
Beautiful.
I moved to Warsaw in Poland to live with her. And we
Nice.
lived in a home together for about 3 or 4 years. But after a while, our relationship came to an end. I felt it. In the book, I say, you meet everyone in life. You can put them into 3 categories. You meet them for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yes.
And you never quite know which one's which when you meet somebody. And
That's right.
only in the fullness of time it becomes clear.
Yeah.
And this was a woman, I think, for me, was in my life for a season.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I was, when I met her, I was 54 and she was 32. And so I had massive concern about the age difference, because I felt that was going to be a challenge with people needing completely different things at that stage of their life.
Yes.
And particularly because of her wanting probably to have children, of course, at 32.
Right.
And I said right at the very beginning, I don't think this is a good idea that we get started, because I don't think I want kids. I'm 54, or whenever you're ready.
Whatever.
She said, "Oh, I don't want kids. It's okay." And I said, "Yeah, but you're going to change your mind. You will." And eventually she did. And so it was always inevitably going to come to that point.
Right.
And even though I'd sort of thought about that deeply and thought, even though I've said all of this, if I feel there's a loving connection between us that's strong enough, I could maybe go along with that.
Right.
But it wasn't. When the time came, it just wasn't feeling right to me. And I followed her guidance. My guidance was saying, this is done for you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's so important, right?
Yeah.
Is listening to our guidance.
Yeah.
No matter what our human life is telling us or our brain is telling us or whatever, we have to go with that feeling state of,
correct.
Is this
Correct.
right? Doesn't make sense that it doesn't feel right, but that's the bottom line. Doesn't feel right.
So it was a big decision. Yeah, exactly.
That's huge. So are you writing another book? I mean, when did this publish?
Oh no, this is literally just got published in the last 2.5 months. So, I'm more sharing the book with people at the moment. That's really I'm focused on right now. There's so many different stories, and I wrote in the last part of the book, my editors asked me, when I reflected back over the 14 years, what did I learn? What was the wisdom that was garnered? And so I wrote my 6 rules for happiness in the book as well at the end.
Can you give us a peek at that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. This has been a long chat, but there are certain core principles, if you like, that if you live by them, they're always going to inevitably result in you having a happier, more balanced life. Like, for example, one of them would be taking 100% ownership for everything that happens. This is the stance to take in life. It's like a belief system that empowers you in a way.
Yes. Because
a lot of energy and creativity is leaked when you don't take full ownership for everything that happens, and if you have a tendency to blame other people or look to assert fault or blame elsewhere, you inevitably don't actually see that you always have a part to play in whatever happens.
So agree. Yeah.
And that you can, by taking on board whatever your part was, you've got the opportunity to improve or change that part of yourself.
Yeah.
But without that way of looking at it, you're completely in the hands of other people, and your happiness is determined by what other people do, which I think is completely wrong.
Right. Totally.
And so that's one of the 6. And another example would be to build supportive, sustainable, empowering relationships. I meet lots and lots of people who talk about their friends as being the people that they've simply known the longest. And that's why they're friends, because they've known each other the longest. But in those relationships, they might be constantly discouraged to do new things, or They might be constantly criticized or constantly put down, but they'll remain in those relationships for what? But
Right.
they're not growing in those relationships. They're not serving them necessarily. And so I think a rule for happiness is making sure you're always surrounded by people that support the highest in you, that empower you, that love you, that encourage you, that give you a springboard to be your greatest,
That's right. Push you.
your cheerleaders. And that means they're not nice to you always, because some of my best friends are ruthlessly challenging towards me sometimes.
But that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
By being challenging, it forces you to go in a little bit deeper and say, and then when you do make your decision to move forward, which most of the time we do, at least we've thought it through. We're not just acting out. We're just, we're getting some input. But I think what is wonderful about friends like that is even if you go against what they perceive, they're still going to be your cheerleader. They've given their thoughts and you take them and you process them, whatever. And if you still decide to go with what you think, they're still going to be your cheerleaders. And I think that's what makes those true friends. So how can we find you? How can we find your book?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For those people that are listening who are on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. My book is on Amazon. And so I can just give you a link for everyone to be able to locate the book. And you can, I've got my email address as well. I can give you, and people can just directly email me. I work as a leadership coach. That's my kind of regular work. I'm not a writer, but I have become an author. But I think I actually have done a pretty good job with the book, I must say.
I think I rarely read, but I think I'm going to go ahead and grab that one and read it, because
I think so.
It's one of those things of always being someone who just, I don't believe in limitations. I believe we can do whatever we want to do. And, being inspired of listening to you, running the marathon to raise monies for children in Asia. I mean, that's really inspiring. So what is your email address?
My name is Ray. So my email is raysbox, RAYSBOX, raysbox@gmail.com.
Beautiful. I love that. Show us the book one more time. Yeah,
here's the book. And I must just tell your listeners, if anyone wants to read this book, I want to say that when I set my intention of how I wanted to write this book from a very humble place. So what you won't find in this book is someone who goes, I've been on a journey. I've figured out how to be happy all the time. I'm never going to have to feel anything again. This is not what's in the book. What I'm saying in this journey is I was broken. I went on a journey to see how I could find a new path that would be fulfilling for me. I think I found it, but I constantly make mistakes, I screw up. I'm not perfect. Here's some examples of where I did screw up in the 14 years. And I wrecked some relationships too. Here's all my, shameful, bad behavior. It's all in there. I'm not presenting myself as I'm not claiming that I know that I can tell anyone how to be happy all the time.
Do it. That's right.
I'm saying that there is a way you can work it out for yourself. This is what I did. Here's what you could do.
You're planting seeds.
You're definitely
planting seeds, and people choose to take those seeds or not take those seeds.
Yeah, but I invite anyone who reads it to connect with me, because I love hearing. I'm curious what resonates for people.
Absolutely, Ray Martin, inspiration. Love it. And I love the work you're doing and the coaching that you're giving, and just letting people know that they can recover from whatever it is that they're going through and still live their best life. And I just deeply, deeply appreciate you coming on today and sharing with the viewers. And I know you'll be getting some emails from people. So
thanks, Patti. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
Is that the solution for the frustration, is to be in your integrity?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Be Always be in your integrity. And in your integrity, you understand.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.